So I want to talk a little bit today about the subject of vulnerability. And I want to talk a little bit about what vulnerability is and some of the ways that it's useful and important in human relationships, and particularly the way in which it can be useful at work. And I have some practical suggestions at the end. I have no idea how much of this I'm going to manage to get through. I've just put a load of thoughts together on the slides. So you may see some stuff on the slides that we don't talk about, but you can always come and grab me afterwards and ask me any questions. So look, here are some examples of vulnerability taken from, like the Queen of Vulnerability, Brené Brown. So, some examples of what vulnerability is, right? Saying no, asking for help, standing up for myself, falling in love, getting fired, firing somebody as well, that's another very vulnerable thing to do, admitting I'm afraid, being accountable, laying off employees, exercising in public, like there can be all kinds of things where we experience vulnerability. And like, what actually is it that these things have in common? What is it that makes something an act of vulnerability? And there's something about the fact that vulnerability is about really being seen. That it's actually about bringing somebody else into your world and really letting them see in. And the biggest obstacle, what's my next slide going to be? Okay, maybe we'll come back to that. The biggest obstacle I think that we have to being vulnerable, like the thing that's sort of the opposite of vulnerability, is this kind of inviolability, this kind of defensiveness, this guardedness. And, it's going to be no surprise to people who have, fans of Grantial fundamentals when I tell you that my view is that this guardedness comes from the ego. The ego is when we are in a sort of an ego-driven state, it's like we're in the opposite of vulnerability, right? Vulnerability is, as we'll come on to in a bit, like not knowing, uncertainty, right? When I'm trying to control stuff, I'm in the ego. I'm trying to have things be predictable and certain and safe and repeatable and known and boxed. And that's useful, right? I'm not saying that we live our lives in a constant, because actually what we're really looking for is balance. We're not trying to constantly be in a state of unknowing, but equally we've got to recognize that unknowing has a value, and if we're always putting things in boxes, there's experience that we're missing out on. So part of the reason why I think that vulnerability is important and why it's worth embracing in our lives is because it's actually a form of strength, right? I put the Petronas towers on here because, when skyscrapers get that tall, they have to be able to move, right? They have to be able to move in the wind, they have to be able to move in response to the moving of the earth. And so, people who have offices towards the top of these towers describe the slightly eerie experience of actually being able to see the other tower sort of moving slowly towards and away from you, which is really disquieting, right? You think, I want to be in a building, I want it to feel totally solid and like it's not going anywhere. But actually that rigidity is in itself a form of weakness. And this, by the way, this whole idea of rigidity is a form of weakness. This is the heart of toxic masculinity. Right, the idea that as a man you can't have feelings, you can't be in touch with your emotions, creates this very sort of fragile, brittle state, which, like a very rigid building, can be shaken to the ground by the smallest earthquake, but a flexible building can withstand a really big one. Actually it creates this very sort of brittle masculinity, this very kind of ego-driven fragility, which then in its turn creates this sort of toxic view that the role in our society is to protect the fragile male ego and to have this kind of the sort of 1950s housewife, right? The kind of subservient role. And it's all built around the fact that men are going into the dynamic weakness that is strength, that ability to kind of have that fluidity and that adaptation. And Brené Brown talks about, her TED talk on this is one of the most watched TED talks in all time, and it's linked already on People and Culture, but I will repost it. She talks about this idea of courage, which literally kind of means wholeheartedness. She did this big, qualitative study, something like 6,000 interviews with people about the nature of connection in human experience. We'll come on to connection in a bit. And she found that there were kind of two groups of people, and there were some people who found it easier to be vulnerable and therefore easier to connect, and other people who didn't. And she described this idea of kind of courage. Because what courage, and there's a link between courage and self-worth, which is, why do we turn away from vulnerability, right? Which is shame. Why do we go into ego and shame and disconnection and rigidity? Why do we do that? It's because we think, there is something about me that is unworthy. Right? That's really what's at the heart of it, which is there's this thing in me, and oh my God, if other people saw it, then like my connection with them would break. They would never, they would never see me, they would never be with me. It would be the end of everything. Which in some ways is true, right? Like, because, as with all of this stuff, I always want to remind us that, we have this sort of quite primal layer deep inside us, where, like from our early experience, these things are true, that you're abandoned and you die. But actually, like in a broader sense for human beings, like abandonment is dying, like solitary confinement is worse than death. That total lack of connection with other people. Like connection is such an important part of the human experience. So something about courage and wholeheartedness is about saying, I am actually an imperfect person and I have all of these problems and these faults and all of these ways that I'm bad and wrong and disgusting, and I can still actually go into connection with other people feeling these things. Like that's the kind of the courage, the bravery, the willing to step forward. It's gonna, yeah, great. So the thing about vulnerability is about taking a risk. And when we take a risk, as we know, there's like potential reward. We can't really have reward without risk in this life, unfortunately. So what's at stake? What is it that actually we put at risk when we're vulnerable? I was talking about like connection and being abandoned. And I think that like the Maslow hierarchy of needs is really interesting here, because like at our most kind of primal level, like, oh God, what is the hierarchy? Oh, it's on my desktop. If I ever need to remember what it is, here it is. So, like our sort of physiological needs for food and for rest and for water and for sex. Is it going to come up? No, maybe it is. Oh yeah, great, there we go. And then our safety needs, our need for like shelter and security and, like how, it's okay, so it's great. Now we've got the food and now we've got, but do we feel that we can actually relax and consume it, right? And then beyond that, our sense of belonging into a group. And then beyond that, our sense of self-worth. And then self-actualization, which actually I think is like, a whole other pyramid of stuff, which is our higher needs. But like what's at stake is, when we're thinking about the risk of vulnerability, is often the, like the base level stuff there is like our sense of sort of safety or belonging or our physiological needs. But there's something about taking that risk that I just think, like my experience in the last couple of years as I've started to embrace this stuff more, like I'm here to tell you today, right? It's worth taking the risk. And like I've written down trust loans. And what I mean by trust loans is my experience living in Amsterdam when I just was in a new city and I didn't know anybody, it's quite an intimidating experience, is that you sort of find yourself thinking, I have to get to know somebody well before I can sort of really be honest and open with them and really share deeply with myself and really build a deep connection with them. And I feel sad and I feel lonely because I haven't got that deep connection going on at the moment and I don't know what to do. But it turns out that actually it's like a system. There's an interrelation. And you can jump into that system by saying, oh, well maybe actually if I share a bit more deeply, the relationship will deepen. And then suddenly I'll actually have that space. So, you can wait for the space and then share, or you can actually create the space by sharing. And there's something about kind of theory Y in there as well. If we operate from the assumption that other people are going to be worthy of us extending our trust to, worthy of us kind of taking a risk and sharing of ourselves, we'll maybe put ourselves in a position where we're willing to make those loans. Theory Y is the choice that we make all of the time. Because there are parts of us, ego, that are going to call us back to theory X. And that's about like building honesty bandwidth. And here we're sort of touching on the way in which it really has a deep application in the world of work, which is when I take the decision to make a trust loan to you or to a particular group, like I build the bandwidth of honesty, I make something safe, I open up the amount of honesty that our relationship can contain. You know, this is the thing that always happens in feedback conversations, which is why I was talking about entering the danger, you know, which is like instinctively, rather like the meeting new people, I think, oh, if I tell you that I think that you're not doing a very good job when, you know, I don't know, whatever it is, when you hand over this lead to me, or when you qualify a grants lead, or whatever it is that's like the hot topic at the moment, you know? Like, I think, oh, well, if I tell you that, I will damage the relationship. But actually what we find generally is that we've now made that thing safe to talk about. If you think about GTF Open on Tuesday, when we were talking about hiring and budgets, and like part of what we were doing there as a group was we were opening up our ability to talk about all of those things without the sky falling on our head. And because there were 12 of us in the room, now what we've done is some of those topics are now just more possible for us to talk about openly as a company, and we don't have to back channel talk about them. We can get into a space where it's easier for us to talk about them up front. And I said, there's this interrelation between friends and colleagues. It's a diagram that I'm sure you've all seen me draw a number of times before. I have two controllers now, which is confusing. But hey, you know, what's the point in having all of this fancy equipment if we can't use it? So it's it's one of my favorite diagrams. You guys can see it if I do it in black. You know, but there's this sort of like honesty. It's a causal loop diagram. That we kind of like the more honest we are, the greater the depth of relationship that we get with people as friends. Great, and that's just a reinforcing cycle. But then there's this other loop over here, which is the more honest we are, the greater the depth we get with them in our relationship as colleagues. You know, and this is like the classic. It doesn't really show very well, does it? But I do my best. You know, this is the sort of classic thing where this is the classic misstep that we make. Well, what am I talking about? Sorry, that was a total padding sentence that I just said. What am I trying to get to? It's very easy to look at Grantry and to say, oh, it's great because, you know, like I have all of these really good friends that I work with and that's really rich. And it's like, yeah, that's cool. But that's a side benefit, you know? And actually, what you discovered is, what we really want to say to people is, we want you to have really deep relationships as colleagues because we want it to be possible for there to be an enormous amount of vulnerability and honesty in your working relationship so that you can do the work more effectively, and then the social relationships kind of follow. You know, so it's the sort of startup culture thing where it's easy to, you know, to look at the finger rather than the moon that it's pointing at. And to think that, oh, it's a really sociable office, that's really cool. And you're like, yeah. And it's hopefully that's like a side benefit sign of the fact that it's a place to do really good work because it's a place where it's possible to be really open and vulnerable. Don't want to say anything more about that, or I don't want to move on. I'm going to just mention confirmation bias. I'm going to try and come back to that. Yeah, maybe I'll talk about it here. So, not knowing, I think, is one of the kind of core states of vulnerability. Because, you know, that's what we're doing when we're taking a risk. We're saying, I don't know what's going to happen here. Right? There's an idea which you may or may not find useful. It's really resonant with me at the moment. I'm finding it really interesting. And the idea is, in life, we sort of have this dilemma between maintaining the current system, right, or putting time into building a new system. And, you know, system in the broader sense, but it's like, in the current system, we know how everything works. It's probably, you know, like 95% predictable. You know, it's the things that we know that we like. You know, I like to go home and have a bath and listen to Radio 4. Great. I know that that works for me. So there are times when I want to do that, you know, and I have like an inbox in my email and an inbox at home. And I have things that need doing to maintain my life as it is now. And, you know, if I don't, yeah. But then it's sort of like, great, but are you stuck in a cycle of just maintaining things as they are now? Because the thing about that is it's predictable. It definitely delivers results. You will do it and you will be able to at the end say, oh, I emptied my inbox and now my life is definitely more sorted. Whereas when you take a risk, when you say, you know, I'm not going to try and control it and have it be predictable, I'm going to go into that state where actually I don't know what it's going to be. That's a bit more, you know, it's a more risky proposition because you're like, I'm just going to try this thing and see what comes back. That's like the vulnerability thing, right? I'm going to try this thing and I'm going to see what comes back. And somehow this state of not knowing is like the ultimate psychological discomfort. You know, like this is, I mean, instantly the thing that comes to my mind is I think about like psychological torture. You know, like this is something that like the Cold War Soviets got really good at. And there's a great scene in the the more modern film version of Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, where they have this kind of interrogation scene. And you know, this guy is strapped into a chair in this weird sort of room with floral wallpaper, with this sort of horrible like combination of white noise and screaming being played through headphones, but it just sort of starts and stops unpredictably. So there's never any certainty about what's going to happen, right? And there's something about the fact that not only is that horrible triggering noise, but actually constantly putting you in that state of not knowing, that constant like, you know, it's a really, really uncomfortable state for us to be. But the paradox is that the more that we can endure that, the more creative we are, because creativity and ambiguity are inherently linked. You know, one of the things that Steve, who some of you know, who's sort of done some coaching stuff here before, talks about in teams that he leads, is that one of the costs of people working remotely is that you have to go into a state of certainty too soon. Like when you're on a project and you're exploring, oh, how are we going to develop this feature for this product? What's the solution going to look like? As soon as you have to communicate that in writing, you start to close off some possibility because you start to define stuff. And actually, you know, there's a, like, you know, theory U, like actually, there's a sort of, when we're solving a problem, it's often good to stay at the bottom of the curve for a bit, where everything is out on the table and we don't quite know how it's going to resolve itself, you know? So ambiguity and creativity and not knowing, and this is what I wanted to bring in confirmation bias. When we're vulnerable, when we take a risk, that's when we have the opportunity to really be challenged. You know, confirmation bias is just, you know, I think that, well, is where we selectively see the things that we're expecting to see, right? So the more that we, it's like we sort of we get involved in creating the output that we're expecting. So it's like, I don't expect other people to be nice to me, so, you know, I don't interact with other people. So I sort of create other people not being nice to me, and I'm more likely to pick it up. Whereas maybe actually if I share the fact that I worry that, you know, like I'm worried about that, maybe something will change. Maybe I'll get something different. Maybe that belief that I hold that other people aren't going to like me or be nice to me will be shaken to its core. Maybe I'll get something new. So all of the theme here about kind of vulnerability is that vulnerability is about connection. My circling teachers, John and Sean, have this idea that they call commitment to connection, which I'm going to describe as lean in, even to leaning out, right? So connection, like, which is, you know, the point that Brené Brown makes about courage and wholeheartedness and about how connection is really the heart of the human experience. And it seems that, like, when you look at us kind of on a like neuroscientific level, we're really hardwired to want to connect with other people. That this kind of leaning in is really important, but sometimes we do get an urge to lean out, right? That it's, you know, that something's uncomfortable, or that there's a boundary, because this is about like the, in fact, do I have a thing? Oh yeah, maybe I'll mention this later, but I'll come to it now because it's kind of relevant. Like this is the like part of taking the risk, part of the unpredictability, part of the not knowing, is that if I'm vulnerable with you, if I share something deeply with you and I just don't know how it's going to land, it might land badly. And that's where we lean into the leaning out. Like, if what you have said has landed badly with me, I've got two options, right? One is I feel the desire to withdraw from you in some way. I feel some sort of sense of disgust or repulsion or fear that I want to back off. And I can either just do that, which is, fine if it feels like the right thing to do, or can I stay with that feeling that I want to back off, but be in connection with you? Can I say, like, I actually feel a bit wary or scared, or like I want to back off here? Like, what changes when we lean into that kind of leaning out? And that's for me like where fuck nice comes from. Right? I'm much more into the idea of leaning in even to leaning out than I am to the idea of like political correctness. And I think I mentioned this later on in the thing as well, which is say it wrong in order to say it right. Like, if you've ever been to a really heated governance meeting, that's a really great example of that. Because sometimes you need to, oh, did I not? I thought I did. Thank you. Yeah. Sometimes we can only get to saying it right by saying it wrong. And if you find yourself thinking, sometimes it's good to say something sexist, right? So, because it's really what comes up for you. It's the thought that you have in your head. And you can do one of two things. You can either sort of self-censor, or you can say it and see what happens, right? And I'm not saying that if something comes up and you're like, oh, wait, hang on, I think that's sexist, then you caught yourself in it. As opposed to something comes up and you don't really notice that it's sexist, but you don't worry too much about filtering, and then you share it, and then someone else says, that was actually a sexist thing to say. And you're like, shit. Yeah, maybe it was, that's uncomfortable. Like, I think for me, the example I was talking to Chris about this earlier in the week was the time that I was around at Greenie's house and we were playing a card game. She hadn't played before and I was teaching her. And, I was mansplaining the game to her that she had already understood better than me, that I'd been playing for years. Like, I was like, well, I think that you might want to do it this way. And then I realised that I'd given her terrible advice and she lost the game because of this stupid advice that I'd given her. And I was like, I actually feel awkward about apologising for having done that, even though it was just like the first time that we were playing a game and we were just all trying to learn the rules. I actually feel awkward about apologising for having done it because I realised that what I did was sexist. But that's cool to have noticed that in myself and to know that that's in me. Like, I've increased my self-knowledge. But there's something about like saying it wrong and just being like, I don't really know if this is the right way to say it, but I think you're being a complete douche, right? And it's like, because that's the thing, like, it's not owned language. It's not like when you do X, I feel Y, which is the right way to say it. But it's cool, like, if we can go straight there. But if what's coming up for you is it's just like, it's just a really like douchey tone coming here, and you could turn out to be wrong. Maybe the other person is totally right, and the reason why you feel there's a sort of douchey tone in the room is because actually that's you. Like, you were the person being douchey and you didn't want to see it, and they're telling you this, and it makes you feel uncomfortable, so you're defensively projecting or doing something like that, right? But you take the risk by going, I don't know how to say it, but here it is. And now that I've sort of brought it out, now that I've dropped it, it's not like I throw in a hand grenade and then I run away. Like, I wait for you to throw something back at me and to stick in with what's going on there, right? And this brings us to this idea that, like, the relationship comes first. Like, there's something about, in the openness of the relationship, in commitment to connection, in my desire that we will have a really open communication between us. So everything else sort of seems to become secondary, like whether we agree or disagree, or whether we're feeling defensive or offended, or all of these things somehow seem to be okay because they sit within this container of this really solid, open relationship that we have between us because we maintain the commitment to connect with each other. No selective numbing. Yeah. The thing about withdrawing from connection and turning away from it and denying our vulnerability is that you can't just say, I want to numb this, but I don't want to numb this. Like when it comes to the world of feelings, it's all or nothing. So if you think, oh, I don't want to be vulnerable with that person, there's this thing that's just really, like, they made me really angry, but I'm not going to share it with them, you know, it's dangerous or whatever. As you push that anger down, you're also pushing all of your other feelings down. You're pushing down joy and compassion and your ability to be connected to yourself, right? When we push down our connection with others, we push down our connection with ourselves. So the more we're open with others, the more we're open with ourselves. And there's something about, like, the reason that I wanted to mention addiction, partly obviously addiction is a, numbing behavior, but this is the symptom, this is the system, like this is a causal loop diagram like this is the system view of addiction, right? That we have a problem, and there's the real solution, which is here at the bottom, the fundamental solution, which the more we apply the fundamental solution, this blue arrow on the bottom left, the more we apply the fundamental solution, and then the red arrow that leads back, the less the symptom gets, right? More solution, less symptom. But this little clock here on the left shows us that the fundamental solution is hard, or it takes time, or there's a delay. Whereas the quick fix solution, which is the addictive behavior, there's no delay, we can just apply it straight away, and it appears to make the problem less, but it has this side effect, and the side effect reduces our ability to apply the fundamental solution. That's the dynamic of any addictive situation. And in the context of vulnerability, there's a really powerful addiction which happens, which is my ultimate hunger, problem symptom, is for connection with other human beings. Fundamental solution is I take a risk and I'm vulnerable and I open myself up and I share whatever is in me, even if it's bad or wrong or shameful, with other people. And there's a delay over time in which actually, because maybe there's some saying it right, saying it wrong to say it right that happens. Maybe there's some short-term conflict and disconnection and unpleasantness that we experience. But the end result is a much deeper relationship, and that I have that hunger for connection satisfied. But what we do is we go up to the top half and we say, I'm really hungry for connection, so in order to get connection, I'm going to hide from you all of these parts that I think are going to prevent connection. And then what we get is something much more superficial, you see? So we've got ourselves into a world of quick reward, but that's like, it's like all we're eating is junk from the cupboards out here, like if those cupboards didn't exist tomorrow, I would be so fucking happy. But anyway, like I have to take responsibility for my own addiction and, control my eating habits, 12 steps, one day at a time. So, we're feeding ourselves like junk food connection when we hide our real selves to just like get that shallow connection, where what we could do is take a risk of getting more. Some caveats about vulnerability. It's totally okay to have boundaries. Nobody is saying to you, you have to, it's totally okay to have boundaries and to have discernment. Nobody's saying to you that you have to share everything that comes into your head, every little thought that comes into your head, Like, we don't have to be just sort of an automatically, like, I'm midway through a meeting with a client and I say nice boobs because it was in my head, right? No, that's not it. Like, sharing with discernment. And it's a skill that you build up over time. Like, actually, what is it important for me to share? Like, this thing comes up for me and, the more you tune in, like, it's an instinctive thing. It's not a knowing thing. It's really clear. Like, you get this, for me, I know that I get this signal. Like, if it's really important for me to share this thing, and I don't share it, I just get so activated. Like, it's like my whole body is gearing up for me to have my voice heard. Just tuning into that and noticing that. You don't have to share everything. And yes, you can have boundaries. That's the other thing. Like, it's totally okay for you to have private space. It's totally okay for there to be things that you actually don't want to be vulnerable about. So on the side of sharing, boundaries and discernment. On the side of receiving vulnerability, generosity and non-fixing. Like, there's something about vulnerability which is a gift. It's freely given. And there's just a sort of, there's something about the generosity which is about, I think what I was trying to get to with that word was like, just an appreciation of that gift giving. You don't have to do anything with it. That's it, really. Like, that's the non-fixing of generosity. If somebody shares with you, you're not then responsible for that thing. You're just like, they've just, like, where did we start with the, like being seen? They just let you into their world a bit more. I get really angry when you say that. That's really annoying. Like, I'm not suddenly responsible for your anger, but I know more about your boundaries now than I did before. So we don't have to fix. Some actual practical examples of vulnerable versus non-vulnerable, which is anybody named? Okay. Okay. Well, anyway, I just think now I'm not vulnerable. 15 feet to 20. Anyway, never gets full. Examples of some of these Chris and I were talking about earlier in the week, which has been really useful. But anyway, like examples of vulnerable versus not vulnerable sharing. So, I could say, oh, that's, like somebody says to me, like, oh, you did a really great job on that, or, oh, like, I really like your shoes, and I could say, oh, that's nice, or sort of thanks, right? There's nothing wrong with saying that, but it's a sort of mask for something deeper, which is like, oh, and, it might be that you want to say, oh, I really like it when you tell me that I do a good job. It feels really nice, Or actually, maybe it doesn't. Maybe it's like, oh, actually, when you tell me that I do a good job, it's actually quite uncomfortable for me because I don't receive compliments very well. I resist it. But there's underneath that's nice. There's an ability for me to actually name my experience a bit more, to sort of share a bit more deeply. And the same is true of I'm sorry. Like, again, like the heated governance meeting, and you can say, I'm sorry, but there's actually something maybe deeper, which is like you want to name like a regret or like a disgust that you felt with yourself, or maybe you don't even want to name what's happened for you, maybe you just want to open yourself up to the other person, because I'm sorry can sort of close things down sometimes, like, I'm sorry that I shouted at you. Another person is just kind of primed to then have to forgive you, as opposed to being like, I shouted at you and I wonder what was that like for you, leaning into leaning out, like, hit me with the impact, like, because you're going to tell me that it made you feel afraid, and then I'm going to feel really shitty. Great, there's a good kind of shitty to feel, to feel the impact of that, to be close to someone in the impact that you had on them because you behaved badly. It's more powerful, I think, than saying, I'm sorry. This is boring. That's a great, like, all of these kind of sentences. This is a really boring talk. I don't know why I came to this. As opposed to, I am bored. I am bored. I am bored is a more risky, more vulnerable thing to say, because you're owning the boredom. It's not just like objectively, and it's like, he's hot, it's the same thing. It's like, as opposed to, I am attracted to him, or I am aroused when I look at him, right? It's like, it's really a thing that's happening for me. On the he's really hot one, this is an interesting thing that comes a bit back to the sort of toxic masculinity, which is, our culture is very uncomfortable with male sexuality. And it's not totally a simple picture, because obviously a lot of patriarchal culture is kind of built around male sexuality, but it's built around male sexuality in this quite unhelpful way. Like, it's actually really hard, generally speaking, for men to say, I'm really attracted to her, or I'm really attracted to him. It's much easier for us to say, she's really hot or he's really hot. To make it an objective fact that we're just sort of saying unarguably. It just happened. There was hotness in the room. And here it is. As opposed to something that's actually happening in me. There's actually a sexual response in me that I'm responsible for, and that is somehow dangerous or whatever, that I'm going to name. And then, like, don't take offense. Like, there's a sort of sliding scale. We can say, oh, don't take offense, but, now that's the first thing. And you're like, so my offense that I might take about what you say, right? That's on my side of the fence. That's my, like, private domain, whether or not I choose to take offense. So you've reached in and you've gone, like, you've monkeyed with me. Don't take offense, but. So then the next version of that would mean, I don't mean to be offensive, but. And there's a little bit more in that where it's about you and what you mean. But something deeper would be, I'm afraid that this is going to offend you, or I'm afraid that you're going to reject me if I say this because it feels quite harsh, but it's true for me. That's sort of a more vulnerable version of don't take offense, because you've taken something from within you and you've opened it out. Oh, did you mean X? That's a good one. But no. Let's. Which one do I want to do these things? Oh, I'll do them in this order. It doesn't really make a difference. This might be quite a quick slide anyway. So the benefits of vulnerability at work. There are big benefits to us as human beings, I think, but the benefits that we have at work. So first of all, thinking about the diagram that's on the board, about the depth of honesty that we want in our relationship as colleagues. That's, there's a really obvious benefit to that. It's that problems that get named get fixed. Problems that don't get named, well, maybe they get fixed, maybe they don't. I mean, we don't know. It's a bit more unpredictable. But the more that we can say, like the handover of, I don't know why I keep thinking about the handover of classrooms, but there must be other stuff, like, the handover, like another conversation about, atrophy of our client book. What's happening there? We don't know. But if we name it, right, if we say there's an issue, then it starts to become something that we can do something about. And we can say, what's going on here? How can we all contribute? How can we get involved? Problems that get named get fixed. But by which I mean, rather than us trying to be inviolable and pretend that we never make mistakes, actually the best way to respond to a client who is really unhappy with our service is to remain in that state of unknowing, to remain in that state of vulnerability. It feels really bad for us to feel that you're angry and really want to do it. Like going vulnerably into situations with clients, programmed to do, but it is remarkably powerful. Remarkably powerful as a sales technique as well, actually. Going in really vulnerably to be like, rather than like having a pitch, as I'm sure you guys know, it's like when you're like, no, I don't have a pitch, I don't have a slide deck, I don't know what it is. It's just, what do you need? Because I don't know. You have to tell me. We take a risk, right? Another benefit that we get is that you learn and develop, right? You can't become, this comes back to the way that not knowing vulnerability and creativity are linked to creating new possibilities. Like, we can't learn or develop or grow without trying new stuff, without going a little bit outside our comfort zone. And to do that, we have to be vulnerable for some stuff. Maybe we just are vulnerable with ourselves. We take a bit of a risk with ourselves. Maybe it's with other people. But it's like that stepping outside the comfort zone requires vulnerability. Another benefit of being vulnerable at work is that people who feel whole, people who feel they can be themselves at work, do better work, right? So that obviously has a benefit. The more that it's actually possible for us to come into work today and say, I just feel really, really weird. I don't actually know what's going on, but today is not a good day for me. Great, right? Rather than, having to pretend that that's not the case. Bad decisions get made by people who are anxious, pretend bad business decisions. The more that, this is why, some of the reason why we have check-in rounds at the start of the meeting, whether there's a cause or not, but it's like, this is the state that I'm in today. I just feel this complete sense of despair, and it's just not going. I just can't see why I would want to take another breath, let alone be in this meeting. That's some quite powerful check-in. But great, okay, but there's something in you that does want to be in this meeting and does want to keep taking a breath, even though there's also something in you that feels that despair. But now you've named it. If you're the person in the room who holds a role where you have to make a big decision in this meeting, you've sort of, you've given yourself more of a fighting chance of seeing the despairing lens that you're bringing to everything, but you've given other people a chance to get back to, which is like, well, no, that wasn't quite what I said, or I don't think that's actually like what these charts show or what these figures show. And I just want to remind you of how you checked in. Like, maybe you're looking at this and bit more of a catastrophic way than you need to. You know, we can help each other. But then also, we can be open enough, we can overcome this kind of imposter syndrome, right? This comes back to what can we be vulnerable about or not. Almost everybody has some sense that they are an imposter, you know, somewhere, that they're not really, someone will one day come along who actually knows how to do their job, and then they'll get found out, right? Great. But you know, the more that we can be open about that sense of weakness, the more we can actually grow into an authentic sense of confidence. And then also, like, we become more commercially successful by trying some things that are inherently vulnerable, like being creative and trying new stuff, like, you know, networking, going out and meeting new people, cold calling, market research, and actually asking for more money, or indeed asking for any money at all. Like, grants don't like invoicing. What's that about? You know, asking for money is quite vulnerable. Because you put yourself in a state of weakness, where you're like, I don't have money, I need money, please give me money. And you know, this is one of the, like, Rich Litvin, is his name Rich Litvin? I think it is, like, you know, just makes huge amounts of money by coaching coaches. And one of his big things is, you know, like, as a coach, you just have to get good at asking people for money. You have to say, yes, I'd love to help you with this, you know, the intimate issue that you've shared with me. You know, it's £200 an hour. And if you're like, I feel a bit awkward about asking for the money, you know, you'll end up doing all of this work for them for free. Or, you know, for much less than you're worth, asking for more money. Some practical steps to take away and try after this meeting. The first thing with all of this is always noticing. Noticing, being more mindful in yourself. Do you notice the signs of when there was an opportunity for vulnerability? Maybe it's here, maybe it's past, but just like, I mean, like, as with all noticing, when you start trying to notice, you know, you'll find yourself, you know, like walking home, and then you'll be like, oh shit, there was that thing that happened 4 hours ago. And then, you know, a little bit later, you'll be like, that thing happened 5 minutes ago, and then that thing that happened 2 seconds ago, and then suddenly it'll be coming. But notice when you think, oh, I'm actually holding back from saying something. There's something that's kind of in me to say, and I'm holding back. Or noticing when you feel like unsafe, you feel a bit frozen or a bit withdrawn, because that's the same thing. It's another form of holding back, but maybe you're not quite so in touch. Or notice when you're chasing away the feeling of not knowing, you know, like, oh, there was that huge problem, and I was like, oh shit, just any solution, that one. Like, that's what happens with not knowing, that we're just like, oh God, please let me not feel the same one. You know, notice how quick you were to respond to not knowing. And when you've noticed, try something new or take a risk. And there are a number of really, really simple techniques. I mean, they're almost so simple that they're hard to take seriously, but they really do work. Like self-disclosure, like, you know, there's something difficult that I want to say, and I just don't know if I can say it. Okay, then I'm sort of a bit hesitant. I don't really know if this is something that I can say. You know, like that sort of self-disclosure warm-up to the sentence, like, you know, it doesn't feel safe to say, oh, this doesn't really feel safe to say, but, you know, never say but, always say how. But is fine. And check-ins are the same, like just like naming your inner state, like check-in rounds in meetings. Use check-in rounds in meetings. You know, call for a mid-meeting check-in. It's like, you know, like I'm noticing that these things are going on for me, and you know, the meta conversation is similar. You're in a conversation, particularly it's a feedback conversation or something. It's a bit charged. You're really coming in with good intentions, trying to share something with somebody you think will help them, and the conversation isn't going well. Step out into the other conversation and be like, okay, well, look, you know, it's important for us to keep talking about this feedback thing, but I'd actually really like to talk about how this conversation is going. What's going on here? Because I'm starting to feel like really defensive, and or like I'm actually starting to feel really aggressive. Like it's like I don't feel you're hearing me what I'm saying, or I feel like you're attacking me, and therefore I'm attacking you back. Like this is happening on the people and culture thing. Like I'm trying to get a bit more into the meta conversation with Dan. It's like I don't want to have an argument with you here. Like I want to discuss this with you, but I don't want it to be an argument. And I've contributed it to being an argument, but I don't want to get drawn back into that dynamic. I want to sort of just stick in the meta conversation about like why is this something that's proving so hard for us to talk about? And then we can go back into the topic, but let's just stick here for a minute, you know, it's a slightly more vulnerable place. Boundary judo. Yes, this is great, because when we take a risk, sometimes we will accidentally overstep a boundary, our boundary or somebody else's boundary. We'll take a risk, we'll share something, and then we'll think, no, didn't want to share that. Or we'll do something and it will offend somebody. But boundary judo is about responding well to that, like leaning into leaning out. This is where we do it. We've crossed a boundary and we sort of stay with that sense of boundary crossing, we name it. And the other bit of boundary judo is sometimes we can just, like, how can I put this? Like, we just name that we have a boundary. Like, someone is pushing with something, or, like, it can be really actually opening into a conversation to say, yeah, there's actually some stuff going on for me in this conversation that I don't really feel like I want to name. And then, what's the impact of that on other people? How is it? But there's actually something that opens up in saying, yeah, there is a bit of an elephant in the room. Yeah, and I'm not going to say what the elephant is, but I will acknowledge the existence of the elephant. Oh, it can be really helpful. Boundary judo. Say it wrong to say it right. I've said loads about that already. Naming the elephant in the room, yeah, like just, as a simple trick or technique, it's just like, what is the thing here that's important that's not being said? It's like we're just pussyfooting around it. Just try it and just be like, could I name the elephant in the room? Could I have a stab at naming the elephant in the room? Maybe I'll be wrong, but I'll try. And asking for feedback. Like, that's a great way to practice vulnerability. Like, how did that go? Could I have some feedback? And then stay in with what follows. Oh, and this was the final thing that I had, just this slide. I thought this was interesting. Maybe it's relevant, maybe it's not. This is called the Yerkes-Dodson law, and it's about saying that you need the optimal level of arousal to get the optimal level of performance. So vulnerability is like puts us into a state of arousal, that puts us at risk and not knowing, and all of those kind of things. So this is about knowing where your boundary is, experiencing enough vulnerability at work, enough being outside your comfort zone, is actually puts you in a state where you're going to perform better. Puts you in a state where you'll learn better and master your task. But of course, if you go too far, if you go over to this side, it'll drop down again. But that's where the boundary judo comes in. You notice that you've gone a bit too far, and you name it, and then you back off. Yeah, so some thoughts about vulnerability. We have some time for questions. Or comments, or we have some time for anything.
I feel there's like a danger to saying there's something in this room or there's like a feeling, but I'm not naming it. Like it's like I feel like that instantly triggered me, and I'd be like, I'd be really annoyed if someone said that. Because I'm just like, well, I'm fine with there being feelings, but I want to get to it. Like how do you attack that when, or like go to that place with someone that's saying, oh, there's something here, but I don't want to. I almost feel like I'm purposely trying to whine or like do something or get a reaction out of you.
Yeah, great. What you're saying here now is what you can say. You can say, because you'll know it at the time, right? Because it depends on the context. If the context is we're in a meeting and somebody just looks like they've been devastated by this discussion, this work discussion, and you're like, I'm just like, I'd like to know what's going on for you because you look really devastated, and I feel, like worried looking at you that there might be something really wrong, and they might not want to say it. They might say, yeah, I don't really want to say it. And then you'll know, like, does it feel good to know that they didn't want to say, but there is something going on, but I don't really want to say what it is. Does it feel good to know that? Is it okay? Or does it feel a bit more like, because there are, just sort of like randomly walking into the room and saying, I have feelings and I'm not going to talk about, and that being your opening salvo, you might want to say, I feel quite irritated that was your opening salvo, because it's like, you've made this a much more frustrating conversation now, and then who knows what they're going to say back to that? We don't know, but I'll say something and you'll say something, and there's more possibility might emerge.
Do you ever think like with these causal loops that you can have a different dynamic where people are kind of being strengthening their friendships more,
Ah,
and actually works adversely for their ability to give feedback from a colleague perspective.
yes, this is a very good point. So, yes, maybe there can be, and what would that look like? It would sort of be like that. There could be this extra loop here. Yeah. Now, I hate to say it. What am I going to say? Any guesses?
And it depends on which stage you're in.
Exactly. It depends on which stage you're in. Like your ability to hold multiple relationships with the same person and to successfully coordinate them is a fourth order capability, which we hire for. So that is a really good point, and that's why lots of organisations which more traditionally geared towards working with people and assuming that they don't have anything beyond the third order capability, like familiarity breeds contempt, and there must be a certain amount of distance between like you and your boss, because otherwise if you get too close they won't be able to give you that appraisal that they need. And it's like, yeah, maybe, or maybe they'll have the level of maturity to understand we actually have different relationships in different spaces. Like for me, the first time I really got into a relationship like this was with Steve, right? So first I met Steve working here when he and Kuhn were providing coaching for us as kind of branch. And then I did some one-to-one coaching with Steve, and then I sort of became friends with him. And I still have one-to-one coaching with him, reasonably regularly. Every couple of months, we'll do a couple of hours that I paid him for, right? But I recognise that there's something different in the relationship that we have when we have coaching meetings. There's a different kind of attention that he brings to me versus informal conversations that we might have about almost identical topics. But that, it's a recent thing for me, but it's also quite cool. So I just want to say, like, yes, there is a risk there, and if you spot that risk, great. You found a developmental edge. Work on it. Come and see me about how to do that afterwards. I don't know. I'm sorry. I'm being a bit flippant, but does it feel like I've answered your question anyway? Yeah. It's cool. Anybody online want to say anything? Maybe you don't.
No questions.
Okay, thanks. It's nice to hear that. Okay, fine.
I would second that, or third it.
Well, I would love to hear about, I can keep suggesting topics, but I would love to hear about things that you would like to know about, things that you would like to learn about, and things that would interest you. So come and let me know anytime. Otherwise, we'll keep doing these and we'll keep trying and see what happens. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Cheers, everyone.
Cool.